Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Lyoko Retrospectives. And today we're going to be discussing episode 81 of Code Lyoko, A Lack of Goodwill. And in this episode has a lot going on, so I'm going to try and summarize as best as I can. In the beginning of the beginning of the episode, the William clone gets in trouble with detention because it imitates a stunt that Odd pulled during lunch, which is where he puts like a piece of food or something at the edge of a fork, knocks the edge of the fork and flips the food so that he can catch it. Well, the William clone tries the same thing, except with a glass, and the end result is that he gets attention when the glass almost hits Jim. However, Jeremy thinks that the clone isn't supposed to do that, so he attributes it to an update that he installed in the clone's tower. Ultimately, he think it was supposed to make it be better and act more human and less stupid, but he thinks that if it's actually evolving to the point where it can seem more human, then or act to the point where it can be the point where it actually starts wanting things and starts striving and improving to try and be doing into its own identity, then Jeremy thinks that maybe it should be something to be looked at. So it's something to keep in mind. With that being said, he's also been doing more work on the super scan for the supercomputer. In this case, after the group had their excursion to the forest replica, it turns out that Jeremy has been digging deeper, and it turns out that that wasn't the only replica. There are others out there, and he's already found a second. And he says to the group that they're going to go investigate it that night. In the meantime, though, while they're talking, the topic of the William clone comes up, and they talk about how it's not the real William, and how it really is just an imposter. And unfortunately, they have a couple eavesdroppers, Millie and Tamia, who overhear this and think that if what they're saying is true, and William isn't really William, then that might give them an opportunity to. Then that will probably give them a big scoop. So they try following it up by pretty much ambushing the William clone on the way back to his dorm, and of course, at first, that doesn't seem to be doing anything because, well, it's a dumbass. But Millie managed to back into a corner by saying, "Oh, why didn't you respond to that letter I gave you?" Even though she never delivered a letter. And so the William clone immediately says, "Well, I didn't answer. I didn't get your letter. William did." And so it spills the beans on everything: Lyoko, how William being captured by XANA, how he's a clone, etc. And of course, Millie and Tamia are just in awe of this. But of course, they need proof, and so the William clone says, "Well, I don't have any proof, but Jeremy does. Back at the computer lab, I can take you there." So yeah, he brings them to the factory. In the meantime, Jeremy sends the Lyoko Warriors to Lyoko, and they travel in the skid to the replica, the second replica. In this case, this is a replica of the desert sector, and just like with the forest replica, they dock the skid in place to a tower and virtualize, so to speak, two of their group into the real world. In this case, Ulrich and Aelita. And they find that the supercomputer this time is located in a desert lab in New Mexico. And it was here that I started to kind of realize that I'm guessing that each lab is somewhere that corresponds with the replica sector, like the jungle, like the supercomputer that housed the forest replica was located in a jungle. The lab for the desert replica is located in a desert. I bet how much you want to bet that somewhere out that there are going to be replicas for the replicas of, say, the ice sector and the mountain sector. It'll be in areas that are roughly similar to that. So I don't know, that might be wrong. And as such, Ulrich and Aelita go in to investigate, and just like in the jungle, the lab where XANA was creating those robotic spiders, it's clear that he's doing something here. As while the place is supposed to be abandoned, they are finding machines at work working on circuit boards. What the circuit boards are for, they don't know, but it's clear that XANA's got something planned here. However, just like in the Forest Lab, before they can get any more intel, they get interrupted. This time, it's not by an army of evil scientists. No, it's from the factory. While there and at the New Mexico lab, and Yumi and Odd are fighting off monsters to defend the tower and the skid. It turns out that the scanners the scanners begin to activate and says something gets devirtualized. And that something is the real William, who, for whatever reason, is now wearing his Season 4 outfit, which I know that everybody's costumes or outfits got updated with the new season, but why does the real William have these clothes? Like, the thing is with virtualization, when someone gets devirtualized, they tend to re-virtualize with the outfits that they wore when they went into the virtual reality. So the real William should still be wearing the black T-shirt and his pants. Instead, he's wearing the season 4 outfit that the clone William is wearing, which is like this. I don't know, like this. I think it's a red shirt, a jacket, and a jacket and so forth. So I don't know. Maybe XANA. I don't know. I don't know why, and I don't see a reason why XANA would probably want to give him the outfit. So I'm going to consider that a minor nitpick. Bottom line, though, the real William is now in the lab, and since he is still connected to XANA, he has all the powers and abilities that someone possessed by XANA has. So he can move faster, he's stronger, he can shoot energy rays out of his hands, and pretty much while he's in the lab, he's ready to cause mischief as he goes down to the bottom floor and tries to smash the supercomputer. And the only reason he doesn't is because Jeremy interferes. And before he can finish Jeremy off, that's when the William clone arrives with Millie and Tamiya. And actually, a funny thing I like is that when the William clone appears, the first thing he says is, "Hey Jeremy, can you give me proof that I can give to Millie and Tamiya?" And immediately the real William looks at that and then just gives Jeremy an annoyed sideways glance because. Like, I don't know why, but that just is funny. For me, I think that's just funny. Like, it's just like he's saying, really? This is what you came up with? I think that's perfect. I think that's legitimately funny. Because if we're operating under the assumption that this is still technically William, just with layers of XANA's personality influencing him, that would mean that some to a degree some of his reactions are his own. So seeing him give Jeremy that face, I think it's just a nice little real. You're kidding me, right? Just like that's the real William just getting through and just giving his own little critique on the clone. Bottom line, he throws Jeremy aside, and the William clone and the real William get into a fight because since the clone is a polymorphic clone, it and the real William share a lot of the same abilities, so they're more of an even match. Unfortunately, the real William manages to knock his clone aside but he is knocked into the elevator. However, William does take that as an advantage as he goes to the computer lab and tricks Tamiya, who Jeremy sent up to fill in the group that they got to get back to the factory. And he goes in and just begins sabotaging things further as he tricks Tamiya into letting him take over, and he shuts down the scanners just in time. And he shuts down the scanner just as Yumi gets devirtualized, so she gets stuck in one of the pods. And he begins trying to get the supercomputer to overheat so that it will go up and Lyoko will be gone. In the meantime, while all the group does manage to get back to the skid and retreat, unfortunately on their way back to Lyoko they encounter problems, specifically new monsters, these shark monsters in the digital sea, which I like them. They look intimidating. They do kind of have a bony I guess they lose points for the design of their tails. They look like just kind of bony things that don't look like they should be on a shark, but they win points for the head as it does look like an actual shark head, except in place of the eyes is the XANA symbol, and they can shoot lasers out of their mouth, so points for that. I like them. They do manage to take care of them, and ultimately when the group does manage to dock back into Lyoko, for whatever reason, William just decides to leave it be. Like, after they get out back into Lyoko, he reactivates the scanners and sets up the timed virtualization while the computer overheats. As such, when the real Lyoko group gets back upstairs, they unfortunately just miss William, who goes back to the scanners and gets virtualized back into Lyoko. In the meantime, Aelita herself is able to shut down the overheating, which I assume William would probably know about. So really, he was just here to waste time. But bottom line, the group realizes they can't let Millie and Tamiya know about all this, so they institute a return to the past. And when they go back to the past, Odd intentionally does not do the trick again on the off chance the William clone, which, I forgot to mention, the William clone got destroyed during the little skirmish because after it got knocked aside, he tried climbing up to the lab to fight William again, but William deactivated his tower, so he just disappeared. But now that time's reversed, he's back. Pretty much, Jeremy admits that the update he put into the program used files from Franz Hopper, And while Jeremy can't confirm it, he suspects that some of these the programs he used for the update file probably went into creating XANA. So even the group, so there might, so as such, they feel that there is a risk there. So there, as such, he does say he might end up deleting the file. I don't think it's ever confirmed, but it is something that's on everyone's minds. So yeah, on the whole, not a lot really. Not plot progression is kind of minimal in this episode, but really what keeps the episode going for me is just the amount of stuff in it. It does feel maybe a little cramped, but not in a way that makes me think, okay, this is too much. It's the thing that keeps you actually invested, if you want to believe it. For starters, they introduced the idea of the William clone becoming more independent and forming its own rational thoughts beyond just the parameters that Jeremy set for it, which it does actually kind of think for a creepy plot, though it also does make you wonder just the measure. It does have that measure of a non-human type of plot point that I like. It expands more on what XANA's plan is, as we learn in this episode that there are more replicas, and we do see that XANA is making headway with them as when the group goes to visit the replica and subsequently try and find the supercomputer it's connected to. They do find themselves in another lab, and it's clear XANA's up to something there. So it does kind of keep you intrigued in what's going on. But what I think the real kicker is the stuff at Caddick and the original factory. As for one thing, we got the William clone actually spilling the beans on the whole Lyoko affair because, well, he's an idiot. Sorry about that. Hold on a sec. Sorry, I'm using my phone as a light. And so while he's still dealing with all of that, because of that, we see Millie and Tamia get caught in the thick of it, and then of course we got the real William causing a mess, which in my opinion I think is actually a great move. XANA is smart and he has tried to destroy the supercomputer directly, but sending William in directly, I think it actually makes sense, especially since the scanners are the only way in and out of Lyoko that you can think of without, the polymorphic clone stuff when Jeremy virtualizes people into the real world. Otherwise, it's like a perfect way. He can send his soldier in whenever he wants, and in a way, maybe this whole affair could have been like Xana sending a warning, like back off. Because, like I said, while William does cause some mayhem, all the damage he does is easily reversible. He went to the supercomputer, and then before he could smash it, Jeremy intervened. Then he went up to the lab and shut down the scanners, and then set the supercomputer to overheat. But then he reactivated them so he could go back to Lyoko, and left, giving the group enough time to shut down to turn the cooling system back on for the supercomputer. So, in a way, for me, it did kind of feel weird because it felt like his intrusion did feel pointless. Like he got some small victories in, but no major ones. He came in, caused some mayhem, and then just walked out. Which I think in a way, I think this is like Xana just sending a warning. It was like him saying, "Back off, leave my shit alone," which I think does kind of make sense. This could be easy. This not only could have been like Xana trying to send William in to try and cause as much mayhem as he could, but it also could have been Xana just sending a warning saying back off, which I think is interesting. Interesting, especially since in a way it kind of follows. It's kind of following with what the group is doing as he sends William into the lab while the group is in one of his locations trying to find his computer and smashing it. It's like he's saying, "Well, fine, you want to send your kids to my house, and I'm sending my kids to yours." I like that. It's just like, again, nothing comes of it, but it could be easily seen as like Xana just trying to show I can do that too. Back off. I like that. It's really nice, and the tension of having the real William there just screwing with things, I think really does add a higher sense of tension because in the real world no one has the extra superpowers they do in Lyoko. So it's not like when Ulrich, Odd, Aelita, or Yumi goes up against William. It's Jeremy with whatever he can grab against a guy with superpowers in and out of the supercomputer. So yeah, you kind of need to be worried in that regard. ultimately, though, so it adds a greater sense of tension, especially with all these factors leaking in. The stuff with the replica and them finding it and seeing that there's more to it, which ultimately does kind of feel like a side note. Maybe I'll kind of call that a flaw. But with Millie and Tamiya, these two innocents just caught in the middle, having to try and adapt as best they could so they don't get killed by the crazy guy who can shoot lightning out of his hands, and ultimately just the tension of dealing with William inside their house. It is all a lot. It's a lot to take in, and ultimately it does feel a lot strong, and it definitely keeps the tension rooting as you try and figure out how they're going to get out of this, especially when William begins sabotaging stuff. Ultimately, again, I think the big problem is that nothing really comes of it. Like I said, William comes in, screws around, and leaves, which again could possibly just be Xana sending a warning, but it also makes a lot of what he does feel pointless. Especially, and it kind of ties into when Ulrich and Aelita went to the second lab. In this case, while we now know there's a second replica, which is a big plot point, there's not a lot of tension in that regard. In fact, the stuff with the replica feels like it's nothing, which is weird considering that should be like a big plot point. Even the reveal that there are other replicas, that should be met with shock and awe. Like, wait, so Xana doesn't just have one of these things, he's got more of them? And I think that should be like a big thing, a big deal. It should be a bigger deal than what Jeremy makes it out to be. Instead, it's like a thing. It's just like another thing to just be there. It's like, oh yeah, there are more replicas. And even when they visit the place and even when they visit the replica and go to the lab where the next supercomputer is, they don't do a lot. It's just there to set up it's there, which I feel should probably be a bigger deal than it is. It probably would have been interesting to see more of the lab and see more of that see more of what Xana's doing there beyond him messing with computer chips and so forth. So yeah, that one I think is a problem. I feel like that should have been a bigger deal. And again, the ending just feels hollow. Like I said, while the whole thing with William coming in and screwing with them could have just been Xana sending a warning and pretty much telling the group to back off, it also feels pointless, as everything he does is easily fixable, and by the end of it, the group just reverses time and the William clone is restored, and they're just wondering, and the whole thing with the William clone and whether it's developing human emotions doesn't feel as strong, especially since the William clone didn't really act that differently from what it normally acts. He's an idiot 99% of the times, and he was just an idiot here. He was just copying odd. Maybe it was something like and a lot of what it did, maybe you could say that him defending Jeremy could be a sign that he's developing more human emotions, but I don't know. I get the feeling that Jeremy could have instituted some kind of protocols in there, maybe with the update, which I think maybe could feed into it. I don't know. It just feels tacked on. It feels like it's just there to have a clone battle between the Williams, which I'll admit is still cool, but at the same time, it feels like they didn't go all the way with it. I feel like we should have seen more of William interacting with the group. Just kind of have them questioning more, is he a threat? Is he a threat now, or is he still an ally? Like, I think that would have been better if we had just seen more of that and seen them more delving into the whole, is he a real boy or is he a monster thing. So, yeah, that's a problem. But again, overall, the episode itself was good. There was enough tension going on, a lot of stuff occurring that kept my interest. The stuff with William entering the real world and acting as a counter agent was nice to watch. The mounting sense of tension as everyone in the factories trying to do their best to keep him from doing anything worse. Them discovering and I feel like all that is really interesting. Its biggest problem is that it takes this big plot point with the replica, which while I do like seeing that there's more to it, it feels like that should have been a bigger deal than what it was. The stuff with William and the stuff with the William clone and how it was evolving, so to speak, I felt should have been expanded on, and the ending just feels disappointing. Like nothing felt like resolved. It was just things occurred. You get things. It's all fixed. That's all it. Yeah. So yeah. Again, overall, not a bad episode. Still pretty good, but yeah, not perfect, but still pretty good. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson. I'll see you next week. Take care.